Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. And just like that, the Super Bowl of bodybuilding, the Mr. Olympia weekend is over. Another year has come to pass, but in case you missed it or want a little more of a detailed breakdown of all the men's divisions, you came to the right place. In today's video, I'm going to do just that. Give you the full top 5 or 10 depending on the division in each men's division. Let me tell you, you guys are going to need a recap video for this one. Out of all 5 men's divisions, only one person held on to their title. Even the wheelchair Olympia changed hands. Between new and controversial winners and all these divisions, we have a lot to get into today, so let me just go ahead and get this video started. If you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more. I don't do recaps like this one just for the Olympia, I do them for every major pro show. So if you like staying up to date on what happens in the world of bodybuilding and want to get the lowdown after every show, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Starting with the 212 class, I'm going to give you your top 5. In 5th, you had Ahmad Ashkenani. In 4th, he had Kareth Bajo. In my opinion, he could have been higher. I really think he should have placed 3rd, but that's all I'm going to say about that. In 3rd, you had Angel Calderon. In 2nd, you surprisingly had Sean Clarita. And in 1st, you had Keon Pearson. I think the whole Sean versus Keon placing is very interesting to say the least. Me personally, I had Sean winning and I think he should have won. And I'm basing that off of judging this show on bodybuilding qualities, meaning I want shape to account for 1/3 of the judging. I want conditioning to account for 1/3 of the judging, and I want mass to account for 1/3 of the judging. Now, what Sean had that Keon didn't was Sean just had the overall more conditioned look. He was harder, drier, and just flat out more conditioned. He had more details, less water, more vascularity. Everything when it came to condition was in Sean's column. Keon was better than he has been before, but he still hasn't reached his best look when it comes to conditioning. He could have still pushed 5% harder. So you can put one of those 3 components, condition, in Sean's column. Secondly, I think Sean was more muscular pound for pound than Keon. This is just pound for pound. I think Keon did overall outsize Sean, yes, but in terms of muscularity, it was Sean. But what really sells me on this point is Sean was more complete. He had a better back, better chest, one more poses in my opinion, one more body parts, I felt. He also had that grainy, more dense look to his muscles just because he has more muscle maturity than Keon. Sean is almost 40 and it shows in a good way. Keon looks a little fresh, a little too fresh. So, based on my criteria and what I thought the criteria was for 212 and open, you have to think, well, what did Keon win? He won shape. And that's really the only argument for Keon winning this. Shape, shape, shape. I think it was close enough in the muscularity department for it to happen though. Keon brought a good amount of muscle, like I said. Overall, he was outsizing Sean. In terms of pound for pound, Sean was bigger, sure. But when they stand next to each other, Sean's muscularity doesn't account for much because Keon is just bigger structurally and looks bigger. And Keon's condition also wasn't god-awful, which for Keon, that's plenty good. Like I said, I think 212 and the open should be judged on shape, condition, and muscularity, each representing 1/3 of the total scoring. But with the way the judges judge now, I think shape is a little bit more important than condition and muscularity. Basically, if minimum requirements are met in condition and muscularity, and you aren't getting absolutely pummeled there, if an athlete has better shape, they're going to win. That's what happened. I'm not saying that's wrong, it's just the new standard, and honestly, Keon is setting quite a nice new standard. He just has a great physique to be the one to set the standard. I will definitely be interested to see if he can repeat next year though. I saw this coming out of nowhere, and it's going to be up in the air if he can continue to hold on to this title. Structurally though, he is unmatched, so really as long as he continues to improve a little bit each year, and most importantly keeps bringing in that okay enough condition, or actually bringing the 100% Keon we want to see, he can probably retain this title. Congrats to the new 212 champion Keon Pearson and the rest of the 212 lineup. Let's quickly head over to your men's physique division. First and foremost, I only cover men's physique in these recaps. I don't really follow the division too closely, and I'm not a very good men's physique judge, so my thoughts on this one will be limited. But nonetheless, here's your top 5. In 5th, we had Diogo Montenegro. In 4th, we had Emmanuel Hunter. 3rd was last year's winner, Aaron Banks. 2nd, Brandon Hendrickson. And in 1st, winning his first Olympia title was Ryan Terry. I do want to add one additional name to this top 5. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering how Jeremy Buendia's comeback story ended. I'm going to say it ended pretty well, but he only managed to crack the top 8 with an 8th place finish. By some people's standards, that's not a good comeback. You have to go out there and win it all for this to be successful. But I'm sorry to say, Jeremy never had a chance. Even with his best physique, what I believe to be the best men's physique of all time, his 2017 Olympia look, he would have placed higher, but I think the division as a whole has moved past that look. And the Jeremy we did get was not at his best, sure. sure. He did look a little deflated in some areas. If he does want to end up sticking around and going again, he needs more time in the offseason and he needs to grow that muscle back, and he'll start to look a lot better. Credit where it's due though, I thought his conditioning was really good. He could have just used some more size. But like I said, it's hard to say even with more size if Jeremy could have been top 5 or even 1. Even on his best day, I think men's physique has passed him up. Honestly, for the worst, but I'm not going to get into that. But overall, coming back after 5 years and still placing top 8, that is a pretty good comeback story, a pretty good success story in my book. Anyway, to wrap this section up, this division changes placings a lot. You have to be 100% on that day, and even then, it may not be enough because this division evolves quickly. Ryan is a good champion though. He has a massive following and everyone in the sport and this division really likes this guy. He's been trying for this title for a long time, and he mentioned something very interesting in his victory speech that I didn't know. Ryan has actually been every single spot from 8th to now 1st. So he's been runner-up, he's taken a bronze medal, he's taken every single place upwards of 8th now. I hope this division allows Ryan to set a new standard, something a little less muscular, but still developed head to toe, including good legs. Congrats to the entire men's physique lineup, and of course, congrats to your 2023 men's physique Olympia champion, Ryan Terry. Moving on to Classic, I do want to discuss the full top 10 here, not just the top 5. There are plenty of big names in this one, so let's go ahead and break that top 10 down, starting with 10th, Jae-Hun Park. He's coming off his major win at the 2023 Texas Pro where he beat 2 top Olympians, Robert Timms and Logan Franklin. This guy is definitely going places. He has great posing and impeccable condition. 9th, Vahid Badpay. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that 100% correctly. Anyway, this guy was a major surprise. This guy came out of absolutely nowhere. In 8th, we had Mike Sommerfeld. He was down from last year's 5th place. It really just speaks to how good everyone else is and how much you need to improve to stay at the top of this division. In 7th, we had Wesley Vissers. Wesley moved up a spot from last year. He carries a ton of muscle and is just a powerful presence on stage and knows how to pose to capitalize on that. He maybe could have gotten 6th if he was a bit sharper. I do think the judges are turning a leaf on Wesley and are finally giving him props. In 6th, we had Michael DeBole. He was up from 10th place last year. He still had that trademark condition, but with noticeable improvements. This guy continues to improve, although he is so close to the weight cap. In 5th, you had Terrence Ruffin. He's back in the top 5, but not quite up to the runner-up spot which he occupied for 2 years. He was better than last year though, and I do expect him to get a little bit better next year. He's one of the shorter guys that got 7 pounds added onto his weight cap, and we saw him capitalizing on that this year, and we will probably see an even better version next year as he grows that new muscle. In 4th, we had Breon Ansley. Breon held on to a top 5 finish and his 4th place finish from last year. With Breon being a shorter guy, he also got some more weight added onto his weight cap. However, with Breon being over 40, I don't think we'll see him utilize the weight as well as someone like Terrence is going to. Still, it was enough for him to bring a much fresher look. The legs were still on the smaller side, but the lower body and upper body were a little bit rejuvenated. Breon still brought great conditioning, and being 40 has its perks, like the great muscle maturity that he brought. Those are the reasons why he placed so high, and honestly, I could have seen him placing as high as 3rd with that grainy look that he brought. But guys like Breon and Terrence are going to have trouble placing higher than this, simply for the fact that there's a new, taller, more Chris Bumstead-like standard in Classic now, and that starts with your 3rd place, Urs Kalasinski. Urs was improved a little bit, but I think a lot of people were expecting a lot more. We saw the updates in the offseason and leading up to the show, he looked like he had packed on a little bit more muscle. He still needs to improve his arms and the back. Overall, his structure is what Classic is all about nowadays, and that's what held on to his 3rd place finish. He's just taller and overall more like Chris. Now this is where we get into our top 2, which turned out to be your main Classic battle. Just like last year, we had a top 2 call out and the same placings from last year. The 2 guys in that call out were yet again Ramon Dino in 2nd place and Chris Bumstead in 1st. Now when it comes down to these 2 guys on their own, here's what I'll say. With Ramon, he was by far the most improved athlete. He was more improved than Urs and definitely more improved than Chris. And while growing some new muscle, he still brought some great conditioning. The posing was still a little poor. It's getting a little bit better each year, but it does hold him back just a little. Now when you talk about Chris Bumstead, he didn't really have any big changes from last year. I thought the only noticeable improvement he had was the arms, which looked a tad fuller from last year. But other than that, he was the exact same or worse. I think the condition was actually a few percent worse than last year, and that was actually the biggest change I noticed. It turns out he did actually tear his lat 10 weeks out from this show, and he couldn't train his back for a full month. Now when he said that in his victory speech, I was shocked. I didn't notice it before Chris announced, and honestly, I don't even notice it now. Maybe there's a slight imbalance in his back, but I've seen much worse imbalances with people that have 0 injuries. So was this close? Everyone this year said it was the closest title that Chris has had to defend. Not only that, but I did just commend Ramon for improving the most, post and said that Chris didn't, and he even had an injury. Were all of these things enough to make this show close? No. Absolutely not. Some people are going to say it was, but I don't think so, and the judges didn't think so either. I had Chris winning 4 to 5 out of the 5 poses, and he had much better stage presence and overall more professionalism next to Ramon as well. Chris won with a perfect score yet again, and if he doesn't retire, I think not only can he win for multiple more years, but he can win all of those years with perfect scores. It's no offense to Ramon Urs or anyone else in the classic physique division. Chris is just head and neck above everyone else and is still that far ahead of everyone. And coupled with those political reasons, mainly him just bringing so many eyes to the Olympia, he's not going anywhere until he decides he wants to leave. This division may seem a little stagnant with placings, but that doesn't mean it's not exciting. These guys are all very competitive with each other, and everyone has their favorites due to this division allowing for a lot more subjectivity. Congrats to all these guys, the rest of the lineup, and your now 5-time Classic Physique Olympia champion, the one and only Chris Bumstead. Alright, and now it's time for the main event. Let's go ahead and jump into the open bodybuilding portion of the video. To address the elephant in the room, yes, I will be lightly discussing the Derek versus Hottie controversy, but first I'm going to break down the top 10 and give a little bit of my thoughts on each guy that did manage to crack the top 10 at this year's Olympia. In 10th, we had Charles Griffin. Charles has always brought great muscularity and great condition, and he does have some gnarly shots. What does him in is the shape of certain areas, mainly the abs. Even structurally, he's wide and has a relatively small waist and a lot of shots, but anytime those abs are on display, he's losing. Nonetheless, he did finish top 10, which is a great placing for him. In 9th, we had Regan Grimes. Regan also finally cracks the top 10 with this placing. But I have to say, this is kind of by default. If other guys like Nathan, Big Ramy, and Nick Walker were here, they would have pushed probably these back two guys and more out of the top 10. Still, over this entire season, we did see improvements from Regan, but he should continue to do what he did last year and take another year off because we want to see more. Filling out this frame guarantees a top 6 finish. I firmly believe that. But he needs that size. Not only does he need size, but he needs to come in shredded. The condition was pretty good here, but it wasn't like that Egypt show that he did a year or two prior. Hopefully though, this top 10 finish motivates him to keep living up to his potential. In 8th, we had a giant killer, Tonio Burton. This is a great placing for Tonio. Most of us said he could pick a lot of these guys off if they don't bring their A game, and that's what he did. Even though he was getting outsized by 50 plus pounds by some competitors, he was shredded and complete. The lighting really did him dirty though. It was washing out the darker competitors quite substantially. But if you look closely, you can see the remnants of some amazing detail in Tonio's physique. He just reminds you a lot of a Dexter Jackson. Not the biggest, very complete, very shredded, and very consistent. In 7th, we had Mikkel Krizo. Not as good as his qualifying show, the Impro Classic that he did in June, I must say. He had an overall better package there, fuller and at the same time more conditioned. I felt the posing also regressed a little bit. He was really messing up the back double, for example. But keep this all in perspective. He was literally in another federation, technically an amateur early last year, and now he is at the Olympia level twice now. He just needs to level up his entire presentation and be more consistent. In 6th, we had Hunter Labrada. Hunter is really being carried by being complete. He's definitely getting better at bringing good condition. I think this was closer to his Tampa Pro package that he brought earlier this year, which is good because he was shredded there. That was his best package this season. He still has some work to do in the back. It improved a lot overall this year, but even from earlier at certain points in the year, it was improved at this show. This season as a whole was pretty successful for Hunter for learning his own body and raising his stock. Now breaking into our top 5, we had 5th, Andrew Jacked. He has great shape as always, but the problems still exist. He is too soft, softer than Texas mind you, and still no hamstrings. Good news though, he's taking some time off, something he hasn't done since he became a pro just last year. Give this guy a good offseason and he can capitalize more on that insane structure. Holding on to his 4th place spot from last year was Brandon Curry. This is a great placing. We didn't even know if he would make it. We heard he was in the hospital and couldn't even show up to the press conference on Thursday. And honestly, I was really impressed. The first day he looked flat, but keep in mind, he wasn't able to eat anything over a day, 30 plus hours while he was in the hospital. And then he came back on the second night and looked a lot better, more like his old self. Still a little bit behind from where he should be, but it was more like the Brandon Curry we want to see. It wasn't a smaller 2022 Arnold version, nor a 2023 Olympia version with a big stomach and trying to play the size game. He brought his old well-rounded self with great muscularity and great pop to his physique and a good dose of shape too. But even then, he still had those regular Brandon problems like thicker skin and of course the legs being undersized. Some people were counting Brandon out, but he still managed to remain in the top 5 despite the circumstances. In 3rd, we had Samson Dauda. I saw him as a clear 3rd, I have to be honest. He just wasn't in condition, and this is an ongoing problem for him. Someone in my comments even called him low def Dauda. a name which I will be using from now on. He was better at the 2023 Arnold. There was way better lighting there, sure, but even things like the fullness were better at the Arnold. Good news though, with this third place finish, he is automatically qualified for next year. We've seen what he can do in a matter of weeks. The amount of change he can bring in just a short amount of time is legendary. But what can he do with a whole year off? He may go back to the Arnold, I'm not sure if he will or not, and he is doing the Romania Pro just next week. Props to him for doing that, but I hope he forgoes the Arnold just to bring up the gaps in his physique. But at the same time, if he needs more time to peak his body and learn how to bring himself in condition, keep competing, go ahead. Your runner-up at the 2023 Olympia was Hadi Chupin. Now I'll get to the controversy in a second. I'm just discussing each guy individually right now, and with this Hadi, I liked him more than last year. He was less full, sure, but that's not the Hadi I want to see. He was playing the size game last year to compete with Big Ramy, but now he was supposed to be setting the standard. He was shredded, like his old self, and that helped him in the back double. I thought he was too smooth from last year, but now he's a lot better, a lot more defined, and he brought that same great muscle maturity and density. You can tell he's the veteran of the sport in this lineup. And in first place, your 2023 Mr. Olympia is Derek Lunsford. Now, Derek was much bigger than last year. He still had the weird conditioning issue though, where he can get shredded in some areas like the glutes, hams, and the back, but he still had the issue of the chest and shoulders region looking soft. My guess is that it's not a conditioning issue as much as it is a muscle maturity issue. He's been adding new muscle every year and it just has that new look. It needs to marinate a little bit. He ate 212 Derek. This year he went out there and made 212 Derek look like a little boy. That's going to do it for the actual recap portion of the video. To give you guys my overall final thoughts about this weekend as a whole, I have to say this entire weekend was wild, but honestly it felt a little bit off to me. I think a large part of this weekend feeling off was because of the outcomes of the divisions. Like I said at the beginning, every men's division besides Classic Physique had a new champion by the end of the week, and a lot of those decisions were incredibly controversial. So you had an absolutely crazy week, but unfortunately most of us expected it to be even crazier. It was gearing up to be even more chaotic in the months leading up to the contest, but soon way too many competitors dropped out. And for most of these guys, it was just out of their hands. We all know Nick Walker's situation. He tried to compete this weekend, but couldn't overcome that hamstring tear. Then we had Ian Valliere retire, and maybe Big Ramy start to do the same. Big Ramy was literally Mr. Olympia in 2021, but gave himself some time off to heal some of his injuries, but we'll see if he comes back. Brett Wilkin had to sit out due to some health issues too, and of course, how many guys couldn't even make it here due to travel issues? I have to be honest, I grew more disappointed each day, and that perhaps tainted my overall thoughts on this show. This lineup had 24 guys qualified for it. On show day, we had almost a third of them gone, and one guy didn't even finish, so yeah, a third of them were gone by the end of the night. And the final product we did get was still exciting and competitive, regardless if I disagree with some of the outcomes, but it could have been one of the most competitive Olympias in modern times if we had gotten the original lineup. Another thing I do want to hit on briefly, because it needs to be said, is the live stream situation. Olympia team, I'm a fan of bodybuilding. Don't punish me for that. Paying $75 for a live stream is robbery. A live stream that fucking sucked, mind you. It's not hard to stream something in HD in 2023. Let's not forget that this event used to be free. Yeah, the live stream for the Olympia was free. Until when? 2020. And that's fair enough. There were travel restrictions, social distancing things, so to compensate for the loss of revenue from the loss of foot traffic and in-person seats being sold, they added the price to the live stream. Completely justifiable. But here we are years removed from the pandemic, and it's 2023, and I'm still paying for some glorified Facebook Live. With all the complaints this weekend, someone who really cares about bodybuilding made an announcement. During the Olympia weekend, Arnold announced that the 2024 Arnold Classic would be free to live stream. He said he loves the sport, wants to give back, and thinks this will help it grow. And could you imagine that? Someone with a fucking brain. No one is going to watch bodybuilding, even the biggest bodybuilding show on earth, when the barrier to entry is $75. Now with some proper advertising for the Arnold Classic, a casual fan or someone that just wants to see what this is all about can quickly just follow the link and watch what's happening. That's how you get new fans to the sport. I've talked about this problem long enough. We all know that paying for a huge show like the Olympia is a fucking scam, and honestly, we should probably all stop so they get the message, especially if Arnold can do it. Finally, I have one more brief complaint because it is said every year, so I will keep it brief. The lighting in the light shows. Fucking stop. They were hyping up this new background because it was less busy, they had less distractions, and it was just a dark gray. And you have to think, oh, that's nice, they finally listened and gave us something we want. But it didn't take them long to roll out the fucking strobe light. Try to watch those posing routines without going into an epileptic seizure. It's 2021 all over again. again, but now this time with even worse lighting. It was washing everyone out and casted way too many shadows. But hey, I'm not going to say much. We all know the Olympia fails to pull their heads out of their asses every year and can't deliver a proper stage production to save their lives. Now let's end this video with some kinder words. I still think we had a healthy amount of competition with what we were left with, and really that was across every division. It does speak to the athlete's quality when I'm still glued to the screen with such a bad live stream. All those new champions had to fight tooth and nail to get there, and that's always good for the fans. And while I did say we had a ton of dropouts this year, I do think bodybuilding specifically is in a good place right now. The fact that we had so many of these guys drop out and still have a competitive show was crazy. We were in a bit of a slow and less competitive era after Filthy's reign, but now we have all kinds of new talent. I think we're going to have some great competitive years ahead of us. That's going to do it for me in this video. Thank you guys so much if you guys tune into my Olympia live coverage. I'll definitely be looking to do more live streams in the future for some other big pro shows, as I really enjoyed going live. So to stay up to date on whatever I'm doing, whether it's live show commentary, more recaps, or more of my other content, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video. With all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.